Hi everyone, I'm Matt from Paramount Sales and welcome to Paramount Profiles, the series where I sit down with the leaders of some of the most exciting emerging B2B companies today. Now, during this series of interviews, I hope to learn more about what led them to starting their own business, understand their successes and their failures, as well as explore what the future holds for them as we roll into 2025. Now, in this debut episode of Paramount Profiles, I sat down with John Conway, the CEO and founder of Io2ML. Now, during our conversation, we discussed why he went from being in full-time employment to being a freelance consultant to then making the jump with his co-founders to create his own tech product in Io2ML. We'll also explore some of the go-to-market challenges that they faced and how they landed a massive client like Volvo in their early days. We'll also look at what the future holds for him as they begin to roll out the latest version of their platform early next year. So for a bit of context, Io2ML is an incredible platform which uses machine learning to help businesses understand their customers' interests and their behavior, which they can then in turn use to create more personalized communications and deliver better engagement. Look, I've known John for a long time. He's a great guy. I was delighted to get the opportunity to sit down with him to do this interview. And he's very, very passionate about what he does that really comes through in the conversation. I thought it was a very insightful chat, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. So without further ado, let's get into it. So, John, welcome.
Thanks, Matt. Nice to be here.
Oh, absolute pleasure to have you, mate. Absolute pleasure to have you. So, look, what I usually do on these videos is start with just saying, how do we know each other? So, a bit of background for everyone watching. So, John and I, many, many moons ago, we worked together at a cart-linked marketing company where John was arguably our sort of top analyst at the time, and I was nothing more than a mere salesperson. And obviously, John, you've gone on to sort of a lot bigger, better things, obviously, since then, which we'll talk about. And when I started Paramount Sales and Paramount Partners, John was one of the first people to join the network, which was fantastic. So John, look, really delighted you joined us today. What I want to do is sort of go on to talk a little bit about your background and sort of what led you to starting IOTA. And so what led you here as part of the journey?
Well, I'll start from the beginning, Matt. So I'm analytical by personality. So I kind of got a job as an analyst when I was 21 years old. I had a lucky escape. I worked for an insurance brand, and I was involved in doing a job which was like forecasting and some of these things that insurance companies have to do. But on the floor of my building, when I used to look across the floor, there was a whole bunch of people that were dressed differently. So they weren't in suits. They were in like shorts and t-shirt in the summer, and hoodies in the winter. They were regularly breaking out for rounds of applause, and like cakes were turning up every week. Matt, this was the marketing department. Okay. So beautiful. I thought I've got to get over here. So I made it my business to find out what marketing was all about. And there was an analytics manager over there that, I would take to the pub for a beer and ask him questions. And it caught my attention because he would say, marketing is the closest thing to like medical science from being an analyst, like how you have to study stuff. And this really caught my attention. So fast forwarding, I was at RSA Group, was the group for 10 years and did 5 different roles. And it was various things, marketing analyst, team lead, through to my final role was like what you'd call head of decisioning, which is really this idea of controlling customer management. And every time a customer touches the company in some way, there's some pieces of data that back up what we should do. So it's a bit like a mix of predictive analytics and what some people would recognize as a next best action program, where you're trying to figure out what's the optimal thing you can do at any moment. I moved on to moneysupermarket.com because they're a big digital brand. So it happens to be they're still in financial services, but what caught my eye was that they had the most customer data of pretty much anyone in Britain at the time. They had a digital marketing setup that was the leading in Britain at the time. This video is not about what they had and what they did, but people can DM me and find out. So they had a mixed tech stack of digital marketing and customer data marketing that meant that I had to go there. And this is where the seeds of IOTA were sown, really. the challenge there was to try to defend Money Supermarket's position against competitors. So one way that you do it is with lots of direct marketing. So how do you own the customer is the idea there. So we worked on a personalization platform, and it was very similar to what IOTA had become. So I went on from Money Supermarket and actually had a detour out of marketing into what I always call data monetization. So I worked for two brands, a startup brand, and then Cardlytics, where we met. So this was a lot where, how do you take a data source and work with partners to commercialize it? So you talked about card linked. This is the idea of brands can use payment data either for campaign activity or, on the other side, insights. So purchase intelligence is something that's not that prevalent unless you run a loyalty program. So these were really exciting times, but it was a bit different to what I'd done before. I promise I will get there. So this was all my background. I subsequently became a consultant. So I wanted to be free and do my own things. Started off with consultancy assignments. And the pieces of the puzzle that came together were that my first couple of consultancy jobs were then back on CRM after all that time. So roughly it was about a 7 or 8 year break. And I thought CRM was, I knew the spend in the sector was going up. Like MarTech more spend was kind of flowing in to tools and platforms. But when I did those jobs as a consultant, I found that I was having meetings where I would talk about the same things that I was talking about at age 21. And it began to dawn on me that for most marketers, their life is not that much further forward. So being direct, what we were doing at RSA was actually quite innovative at the time, with all these predictions and different things that drove the actions. And the rest of the world, well, at least the sample of two that I hadn't quite caught up. So there was this part of it, and also just really the application of data for campaigns. So my job is to sit there and listen when people say, how do I make my campaigns more engaging? My boss wants me to use data to make these campaigns better. What do I do? So those questions were being asked even if there was an analytical group, in the company. So again, the penny that was dropping to me is that sometimes the analytical communities were either not focused on marketing as much, or were getting dragged somewhere else. So revenue management is one thing, and like explaining sales volumes and commercial problems and product analytics. There was at least where I was on consultancy assignment, fewer analytics resource on the marketing side. So putting all that together, I was feeling like, right. Well, and Matt, they also had tech they couldn't use. Okay, yeah. So they used big marketing clouds were the platforms for the marketing campaigns. Couldn't use it. Army of consultants and admins swarming around to help them just send. Not even the data intelligence, just to ship the campaign in the most basic form. So that combination of things is what led to IOTA. I had the feeling that what marketers need is something they can use themselves that helps them make their campaigning better, but requires minimal use of IT, data scientist, or something that's the people blocker as to why can't they do this. So we chose to put IOTA together. The story there was that we were a pandemic brand. I had the idea for it. Again, the seeds were sown at some of the things we did at Money Supermarket, and then what I saw consulting. And the final piece of the story was that it was just during the first lockdown, like literally the first month of 2020, March 2020, if folk remember that. I was telling my wife all this, and I was like, oh man, I've got to corroborate this with somebody else. I'm going to just text this one person I know. She was the lead at a big retail brand with, I don't know, 6 billion revenue, global stores, 3,000 stores globally, big loyalty program. And I thought, if this person says that like the application of data science there is poor or non-existent, then I'm going to do this. Anyway, I've got a funny slide that shows her response. She said, there's loads can be improved where we are. And that was it, Matt. It was game time. So I had to then find a founding team to start things off.
No, it sounds it sounds great. It's great. Obviously, you identified obviously a gap, not necessarily in the market, but a gap within sort of a company's process as well, in terms of try and find something to plug that gap.